Welcome to our Parsha Shiur on Parshas Miketz. This is actually a do-over of the Parsha Shiur that we had last night. Unfortunately, we forgot to record, so I'm going to do the best I can to recreate the Shiur that we had last night. Our Parsha, as I said, is Parshas Miketz. But the Parsha begins with the words that we see in front of us here on the share that we have, and it's right here at the top. It says, "Vayehi Miketz shnosayim yomim." At the very first pasuk in the parsha, it was at the end of shnosayim. Shnosayim means 2 years, and then it says, "Vayehi Miketz shnosayim yomim." It was at the end of 2 years of days. Why do we add this word days? Wouldn't shnosayim yomim? Wouldn't Shnasayim by itself has certainly been enough? Shnasayim means 2 years. Why does it say 2 years of days? And our Mefarshim and Rashi points out it was 2 years to the day. There wasn't 1 day less. It was a full 2 years after Yosef had interpreted the dreams for the Sar Hamashkim, the wine steward, and the Sar Ha'ofim, the bread steward. And the way he interpreted them, they exactly came true. And because, as Rashi at the end of last week's Sedra mentions, I'll read you that Rashi. It's not up here, but I'll read you that Rashi. The last pasuk in last week's Sedra says, "V'lo zachar Sar Hamashkim es Yosef vayishkachehu." Yosef had asked the Sar Hamashkim, "Please remember me." In fact, he said it 2 different times before he interpreted the dream for the Sar Hamashkim. He said, after he interpreted the dream for the Sar Hamashkim, he said, "Ki im zachartani itcha." But please, only if you will remember me with you, kasher yitavloch, when things will be good for you, v'asisa na'imadi chesed, and if you will please do with me kindness, the his kartani el paro, and you will remember me to Paro, and you will take me out of this dungeon, this house that I'm in now, which was the dungeon where he interpreted the dreams for the Sar Hamashkim Sar Ha'ofim. In this pasuk at the end of last week's Sedra Vayeshev, in pasuk Yud Dalet and Perik Mem, Yosef is asking the Sar Hamashkim 2 times. Once, the second time, the his kartani. Says Rashi at the end of last week's Sedra, when the Torah reports to us in the very last pasuk of last week's Sedra, the lo zachar Sar Hamashkim es Yosef. The Sar Hamashkim did not remember Yosef, vayishkachehu, and he forgot him. He didn't just not remember, he put it out of his mind, and he forgot all about him. Says Rashi, the lo zachar Sar Hamashkim bo bayom, that very day he didn't remember him, vayishkachehu la'achar zman, and he forgot about him after la'achar mikan, from after this, after that moment. Why? Rashi says, "Mipnei shetola bo Yosef lizachro," because Yosef hinged his freedom on the remembrance of the Sar Hamashkim. Uskaklios oser stay shanim. For that reason, he was required to remain an extra 2 years. And Rashi, in support of this, quotes a pasuk in Tehillim in Perik Mem, "Ashrei hagever asher sam Hashem mivtacho." Happy or fortunate is the person who puts his trust in Hashem, v'lo pana el rehavim, and he doesn't turn to the arrogant. He doesn't turn to the arrogant ones. V'lo botach al Mitzrayim ha kruyim rahav, and he didn't have to put his faith in the Egyptians that are called arrogant. And so because Yosef put his trust rather than clearly in Hashem, but instead he put his trust in the arrogant ones, the arrogant one being the Sarah Mashkim, therefore he had to stay an extra 2 years. Now, why are the Egyptians and why is the Sarah Mashkim particularly in this case called the arrogant one? In addition, and this is something that is brought down in the Kol Dodi by Rav David Feinstein's my Rebbe, who so beautifully explained as follows. There's a good question we could ask. What did Yosef do so bad? After all, Hashem tells us we're not supposed to rely on nisim, on miracles. Yosef was doing exactly that. He was not relying on an ace. He was doing his ishtadlus. He was doing the effort that he needed to do in order that what he was hoping to get done would be accomplished, that he would be taken out of prison. He asked, God sent him, the Sarah Mashkim, and he said to him, listen, I have an in with you. You're my ticket. Don't forget, tell Paro about me so that I can get out of here. Perfectly reasonable that a person take every opportunity that is offered to him, that he goes and gets himself out of the prison. You know, it's like the famous story of a fella whose boat capsized in the ocean and he's floundering around and he needs to be saved. And all of a sudden, a fella with a motorboat comes by and says, jump in, I'll save you. He says, no, I'll be all right. God will save me. The man says, I'm here. He said, don't worry, I'll be fine. And then a helicopter comes along, lowers a rope, a ladder, and says, climb on, I'll save you. He says, don't worry, God will save me. The helicopter leaves. Finally, the man can't anymore hold on. He drowns, he dies. He comes before Hashem, and he says, I had such faith in you, and I wasn't saved. So Hashem says to him, who do you think sent the motorboat and the helicopter? You know, Yosef was sent this Sarah Mashkim. Wasn't he proper in asking him? No. Because first of all, your hishtadlus is to say one time. If you say one time, remember me to Pharaoh, that's enough. But once you mention it 2 times, it's almost as if you're emphasizing that there's no other way out. And that was the mistake Yosef made in asking for 2 times. But why is the Sarah Mashkim called Rehovim? Why is he called arrogant? Because the day he got out, he should have, okay, 2 days later, 3 days later, when he brings the cup of wine to Paro, he's in with Paro. He's like this, you know, together with him. Paro wanted him back on the job. He had an opportunity a day later, 2 days later, nothing. He said nothing. He didn't mention it at all. Why didn't he mention it? He didn't mention it because he believed that he was the source of his freedom. It wasn't Yosef, his arrogance. I'm the one. I'm the butler. I'm the big shot. I'm the man. And we see that in Egypt, that was the approach. Are you kidding me? Paro thought he was God. That's arrogance. The Sarah Mashkim thought, it's not Yosef who got me out. It's my charisma. It's my special job, my special talent. I'm a wine sommelier. You know, I'm someone who knows the wine better than anybody, and he couldn't do without me. And so the arrogance is what is causing him to stay another 2 years. And the Torah is teaching us how arrogance is important to put on the side and get rid of it, because ultimately it comes back to bite you. And 2 years later, as Paro is in deep trouble because he's so upset over the dream and he's in a bad mood. And the Sarah Mashkim remembers, the last time he was in a bad mood, I almost got my head taken off from my shoulders. I better try to help him out. And now, because his own skin is in danger, now he remembers and he goes to Paro and tells him about Yosef. So therefore, that's why he had to say, it was 2 full years, day to day, not one day earlier, to teach him and to teach us, you don't put your trust in the arrogant. I'd like to move on a little bit now and have a discussion about something that I'm sure everyone is concerned about. In the last few sedges, starting way back, with Parsha Lech Lecha, where Paro has a dream about Sarah and Avimelech and Yaakov, Vayetze, when Yaakov goes out and he stops by, Yerushalayim, and he immediately he lies down to go to sleep. He puts the stones around his head, and he has a dream, and he sees the Malachim going up and down the ladder. Dreams. And then, of course, Abraham had the dream in Lech Lecha about the vision that he saw of the 400 years of exile and ultimately the Jews coming out of Mitzrayim. And then we have the dreams that Lavan had about the sheep. And we see that Yosef had dreams in last week's Sedger about him and his brothers, the sun, the moon, and the stars coming down to bow to him, and all the sheaves bowing down to Yosef. And now in Miketz dreams, Paro is the one who dreams. The Sarah Mashkim and the Sarah Ha'ofim dreamt last week. Paro's dreaming this week. So many dreams, so much dreams. What do dreams mean? What is the Torah outlook towards dreams? We all dream. In fact, if we didn't dream, we couldn't live. We know scientific experiments have been done with volunteers who agreed to be under an experiment, and they measured the brain waves. And when a person dreams, so there's called REM sleep, rapid eye movement, and they can attach electrodes and see the graph going wild with the movement, while when a person is not dreaming, there is a very easy elliptical wave, not at all being disturbed by rapid movement. So we know that a human being has to dream during the night, usually about once an hour, once every hour and 10, 15 minutes, something like that. And we're always dreaming. And in fact, if we wouldn't dream, we couldn't sleep well. People who are allowed to dream feel they have a good night's sleep. Sometimes when you wake up in the morning and you feel a little tired, you go back to a little bit of sleep just for a few minutes if you have the time, and you can, as they say in Yiddish, he grabbed himself a little dream, because that little dream, just a few minutes of it, brings such peace to your soul and to your mind that you're able to function that much better. So dreams are very, very powerful, and they're important. And the only thing is, what happens when we have a dream that's disturbing or upsetting? How does a Jew deal with dreams, and how do we explain them? Do they mean anything? Interestingly enough, you should know that there are 2 simanim, 2 chapters in the Shulchan Aruch that deal with dreams. I'm going to highlight right now the first one that we're going to deal with here on this page. It's in the Shulchan Aruch or Orach Chaim, Siman Kuf Lamed. I'm going to highlight it right now. We can see it right here. Okay. This is the first siman that we're going to look at. Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim, Siman Kuf Lamed, and it's dealing with when the Kahanim go up to Duchen. Now, in the United States of America and outside Eretz Israel, Duchen really means platform. The Kahanim go up to the platform, to the Duchen, only on Yomim Tovim, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. In Eretz Israel, they actually have Nesias Kapayim, which is the raising up of the palms, which is the symbol for Kohanim giving the blessing to the Jewish people, Yivarecha Hashem Yishmerecha, and so on. And during this Nesias Kapayim, we recite at the end of each sentence, after Yivarecha Hashem Yishmerecha, and then after Yoer Hashem Panav Eilecha Vichu Neka, and then again Yisa Hashem Panav Eilecha Yisem Shalom, we recite this Ribona Shalom Sha'omim B'Shas Nesias kapayim. That what about this Ribono Shalom that we do at the time of the duchening? Says the Mechaber of the Shulchan Aruch, man dechaza chalma, someone who saw a dream, the lo yada, and he doesn't know my chaza, doesn't know what he saw. You know, dreams are so convoluted, it's difficult to make sense out of them. And he doesn't know what he saw, so he wants some help to have a psychological release and to feel good about it. The halacha says, Neikun kamei kahani, let him stand in front of the kahana b'shas she olim leduchen, when they go up to the platform to say birchas kahanim, the name of achi, and this is what he should say. And then, quoting the Gemara, he says, Ribono Shalom, Ani Shelcha, Chalom Lasai Shelcha, and so on and so forth. Chalom Chalamti, the Ein Yodei Malhi, I don't know what I dreamt, and so on and so forth. The Yekavein, the Lesayein, and he should have in mind to finish in Bade Kani, together with the Kahanim, the Ani Tzibura Amen. So that after the Kahanim say V'yishmerecha, and while they were singing the song, in the meantime, as the Mishnah Berurah points out, while they're singing, you will say the Ribono Shalom, that whole paragraph. When you get to the end, the Kahanim are going to say V'yishmerecha, and everybody says Amen, and they'll be saying Amen not only to the V'yishmerecha, but they'll be saying Amen to what you said in the Ribono Shalom. And that will be again at Vichuneka, and again, Yosem L'cha Shalom. I know after the Yosem L'cha Shalom, there's a Yehi Ratzon that some people say instead of the Ribono Shalom that we pointed out here, but there are others that say we, because of this sif in the Shulchan Aruch, we should actually say the Ribono Shalom again a third time. And there are some that say no, follow the Nusach that's in the Siddur. But either way, under all circumstances, everyone else is answering Amen. But what are you going to say to me? Yeah, well, that's only on Yom Tov. What about every day of the week? I had a dream on Tuesday, Wednesday, and so on and so forth. So the Shulchan Aruch continues. The elo, if you can't do this because they're not duchening, lema hachi, say the following: Adir b'Boro, the exalted one up on high, Shochei b'Gvura, who dwells with might, Ata Shalom, the Shimcha Shalom, you are peace, your name is peace, Yehi Ratzon, may it be your will, Shetasim Aleinu, that you shall put on us. And here we add some words in the Siddur Chaim Uvracha L'Mishmeres Shalom. You should give us life and blessing to be guarded Shalom, for peace, right? And the Ramah says, Ubemokom she'ein olen leduchen, where outside Eretz Yisrael they don't go duchening. Yomar kol zeh, you should say this, B'shas shliach tziba omer sim shalom. Look, the shliach tziba is going to say Birchas Kohanim. After he says Birchas Kohanim, he's going to say sim shalom and so on and so forth. And since he's going to say sim shalom and so on and so forth, you should say your piece of Adir B'Amor and Shochem B'Ruah, Ata Shalom, Shimcha Shalom, Yosan Shabbos Leinu Chaim B'Rachum Mishmer Shalom, and then the Yisayim B'Hadei Shliach Tzibur ended, completed at the same time that the Shliach Tzibur completes his statement of Sim Shalom, Sheya'anu Hakol Amen. That all the congregation will then answer Amen. So your saying of these words, even during the week, that also makes the dream acceptable. Now, when I say acceptable, it means that you've interpreted, in a sense, the dream for good. We have a rule that when it comes to dreams, we have a rule, and this is the rule right here. I'm going to highlight it at the end of all these Mefarshim. We have a rule of Hakol Holech Achar HaPisron. Everything goes after the interpretation. If you interpret it positively, it will be positive, right? If you think good, it is good. If you interpret good, it is good. Always interpret it for the good. I remember when I was a child, I once had what I would consider, I suppose, a bad dream. Children like to play ball, and here I had this dream about breaking an arm or something. And so I woke up all upset, and my grandmother, who lived with us at that time, so she said, well, in Yiddish, what's bothering you? Why are you so upset? I said, I had a bad dream. She says, no, it was a good dream. I said, what do you mean it was a good dream? Tell me what you dreamt. I said, I dreamt I broke my arm. She says, oh, you're going to have a strong arm. I said, how do you know? She says, because everything goes by the interpretation. If you think that it means bad, no, it means good. It means good. I said, what happens if I have a good dream? She says, you have a good dream? Oh, certainly going to be good. Because everything goes by the interpretation. And that's what we have to do. We have to recognize that the interpretation of the dreams must be good, because it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You become a believer and a positive person, because the Gemara says, the famous Gemara at the end of Brachas, where there was this man, Bar Hedya, who always interpreted dreams so bad if you didn't give him enough money, and consequently he ultimately was cursed and he got into big trouble. We're not going to go into that now. But the point is, you must interpret for good, because when you interpret for good, it comes out good, because the nature of dreams is that they have a kol hoech acharah pisron. Now there is one siman, which I did bring down over here at the end. I want to just show it to you. It's also in the Shulchan Aruch, right? In Orach Chaim, siman reish chav, and here it's called hatavas chalom, making a dream good, the ta'aniso, and the fast. There is such a thing as a tainus chalom, fasting over a dream, but even though the Shulchan Aruch discusses it, it's not a chiyuv. It's certainly not required. But if you want, the person really wants to, they can. But look what the Shulchan Aruch says in Siv Aleph. This is crucial. And it's exactly what we've been saying here. Haroeh chalom v'nafsho aguma olav. If someone sees a dream and his soul is all upset over it, yetavenu ba'ape tlasa derach milei. He should say it over and get a good report in front of 3 people who love him. The lema be'apayu. They should say right to his face, right? And he should say to their face. He, the individual, should say to their face, Chalma tava chazoi, I saw a good dream. Ve'lemru inhu, and they should say, Tavahu v'tava leheve. It was good and it will be good. That's the Shulchan Aruch says. Even though it says if you wanted to, you could fast, it's being discouraged by the Shulchan Aruch. It says, go to people who love you and tell them, I had this good dream. You start out by saying it's a good dream. It's a euphemism, but really what you meant. I had this good dream, and they should say to him, Tava, the Tava leheve. It's good, and it will be good. As a good, you think good, it is good. Because what happens is that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Interestingly enough, there is a Chazon Ish that speaks about dreams, and in this missive that the Chazon Ish gives us, this is what he says. It's brought down in the Orchos Rabbeinu, in the ways of our Rebbe, the Chazon Ish. It says like this. It says, if one is makpid ala chalomos, he says that he says it differently. Lo yakpid ala chalomos. A person should not be makpid, shouldn't be very exacting about dreams. The aflo omar as tzilas u'gana shalom. He says you don't even have to bother saying the u'gana shalom. Kivan sha'chalomos bizmanenu because the dreams today in our time, Bo'im mehir her halev ve'enam marim dovar. He said it comes from what you're thinking about, and therefore it doesn't have any great value. However, if someone is very perturbed about it, ula'acherim hora sheyomru es tfilas ribbono shel olam b'shas nesiyas kapayim. But he did say, if you're really bothered about it, so you'll go back to what we learned in Siman Kuf Lamed, that you say the Ribbono Shel Olam, and that, of course, will save you from having any bad thoughts about the dream. So in reference to this particular topic of dreams in the Sedra and so on, we've learned some important halachic issues that might help us understand always to say the very best we can about dreams and to recognize that there's a lot of good that can come because we interpret it for good. If we interpret it for good, ultimately it is good. I'd like to go now to a new shiur and show you a piece of Gemara that we recently learned in the Daf Yomi on Daf Yudches Amud Beis, and I want, Yud Zayin Amud Beis, I believe it is, right? Is it Yud Zayin Amud Beis or Yudches Amud Beis? Yudches Amud Beis, right? It's Yudches Amud Beis. Right, yeah, Yudches Amud Beis. Here it is. Here is the Gemara on Yudches Amud Beis in Masechta Tainus. And why am I bringing this up? There's in our Sedra in Miketz, we find that the brothers go down to Egypt at the behest of Yaakov because we can't show off that we have a lot of food and so on, right? And they go down, and Yosef knew they were coming, and they came in 10 separate entrances and so on, and they are brought to Yosef's house, and they're accused of being spies. And of course, Yosef is trying to see whether or not they did tshuva and so on, and they come before Yosef, and wines them and dines them, sends back the money with them, but Yosef asks, bring down Binyamin, and then I'll let Shimon go. Yosef takes Shimon, and he puts him aside. He arrests him, so to speak, and puts him in jail. And he says to the brothers, you go home, you tell your aged father that if he wants to see Shimon again, he's got to bring back the little younger brother you spoke about. And after you bring him back, I want to see if you're telling the truth. If you bring him back, I'll let you all go. So they go home and they tell Yaakov, and Yaakov is beside himself. What? I knew something's going to happen. He says, Yosef einenu, Shimon einenu. Yosef's not here, Shimon's not here. Binyamin tikachu, and Binyamin you're going to take. Alaya you pull on. Everything will be overturned on me. Everything will be terrible because if something happens to Binyamin, or someone, if God forbid an accident happens, I'll go to my chas v'shalom to his grave. He says he's going to go to his grave in travail. So he doesn't want to let Binyamin go. And finally, they're running out of food and there's still a famine. And Reuven proposes, I'll bring him back. I guarantee you I'll bring him back. And if not, you can kill my 2 children. So Yaakov says, are you a shaita? Are you a fool? What, are you kidding? Are your children not my children? Grandchildren are children. Grandchildren are just like a child to a grandparent. How could you think, says Yaakov, that it's not going to affect me? That's not going to guarantee that you'll bring him back. And finally, Yehuda comes over to Yaakov and he says, if I don't bring him back, I will sin, I will be considered sinful all my days. And Rashi interprets that it means, and Chazal tell us, that Yehuda was willing to risk his olam haba, the most precious possession that we have, because he knew, he guaranteed that he would bring Binyamin back, even at the expense of his own life and giving up his olam haba. When Yaakov hears this, he agrees to let Binyamin go. The question, of course, is raised, is a person allowed to risk their lives? Are you allowed to risk your life on a maybe, on a chance? is one allowed to risk one's life on a chance? Is Binyamin allowed? He was not a baby. He had many children already. Is he allowed to risk his life to go on the chance that maybe he'll get Shimon back? Is he allowed to put his life in danger? Is Yaakov allowed to allow him to go, to put his life in danger when something like this happens? So it's interesting. I'm going to bring up a Gemara that we're learning in the Daf Yomi. We just learned it in the middle of this week on Daf Yud Ches Amud Beis, where the Gemara talks about what's called Megillas Tainus. Megillas Tainus doesn't mean the Megillah of fast days, exactly the opposite, in fact. It means it's the Megillah of days on which one may not fast. These are the days one may not fast, because good things happen to the Jewish people. And the Gemara goes on to talk about some of the days that were taken away from this law of not fasting because of tragedies that happened on those days. And the Gemara talks about a day of Tudainus. If you can follow me over here, you see the little hand. And the Gemara wants to know my Tudainus. What was the day of Tudainus that was taken away from the forbidden law of fasting and they were allowed to fast? What happened with Tudainus that made it that we were no longer forbidden to fast on that day? Because that day, whatever day that was known as Tudainus. Amru, they said like this. Kishabikesh, this is on Daf Yud Ches Amud Beis in Tainus, if you want to look it up. Kishabikesh Tudainus la'arog es lulinus upapis ochiv belutkia. Tudainus, the Roman procurator, general, leader, he wanted to kill Lulinus and Puppis, two brothers in the city of Lutkia. Lud, small Lud. What happened? The Rashi explains, there was a princess of Rome was found murdered. You know, she's found murdered. They don't know who murdered her. Who do you blame? You blame the Jews, of course. So Tudainus blamed Lulinus. Tudainus blamed all the Jews, and they were going to kill the whole town of Lutkia. They would kill everyone in town was going to get killed if the killer did not come forward. So Lulinus and Puppis, two brothers, came forward and they said, we killed her. We accept the responsibility. Amalahem. So Tudainus said to them, if you come from the people of the three great Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah that were thrown into the fire but came out alive, if you are like Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, then Yovo Elokeichem v'yatzel eschem miyadi. Your God can save them from my hand. It's the same way that Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah was saved from the hand of Nebuchadnezzar in Beth-El. In the first base of English, and this is the time of the second base of English. Arulo, so they said, listen, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, tzaddikim gemurim hayim. They were righteous, complete righteous people, right? And they had the proper miracle happening for them because they were fit for it. And even Nebuchadnezzar, he believed in God. He might have been a little wicked, but he did have faith in God. And after Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah came out, he turned the corner and became a little bit more benevolent. And therefore a miracle was done to him. But also Russia, but you, Hedyotu, you're a simpleton, a nothing. And you're not fit to have a miracle done. And we ourselves are chayiv for another reason. If you don't kill us, God has many messengers to kill us. And there are many bears and lions and bears in his world to kill us. That are going to come to us and kill us. Ella, but I want you to know one thing, they said to Tudainus. Lo Masarnu HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'yodecha, Hashem only put us into your hand. Ella she'osav liparad minu mi yodcha, only that God is going to pay back if you take our blood and you kill us. And they try to explain that they're taking responsibility so that save the Jews, but they're innocent. Aval Pikain, nevertheless, even though they warned him that you're going to die if you do this to us, Hargan, he killed them. Says the Gemara, Miyad, Amru, Miyad, Amru, they immediately said, Lo Zazu, Misham, they didn't move from there. Tyrannus didn't even get a chance to move from the place he killed these two young innocent Jews, Ad Shabbat Yupli Meromi, until the special executioner officer came from Rome, who Patsu Esmocho Begizrin, and they pierced and they smashed his head with blades and swords and knives and so on. So this was an example of two people that put their lives in danger to save the rest of Klal Yisrael. So now the question is, we started with Binyamin. Did Binyamin have the right to take this chance? Did Yaakov have the right to send Binyamin down? Maybe he had no right to risk Binyamin's life. So there's an interesting tshuva by Rav Moshe Feinstein in the Idros Moshe at the end of the first chelik of Yoredeya, in which he discusses kidney transplants. And he was asked, is it allowed for a human being to offer a kidney to someone else to save his life? Because after all, when he goes under the knife to take out his good kidney that he will give to someone else and save his life, he's putting himself, number one, in sakana, because when you have a general anesthesia, which you must have when you're having an operation of that sort, the din is if the person is under general anesthesia, they have to, and when they get out of it, they have to actually bench gomel. If you have general anesthesia, even a simple procedure that is not life-threatening itself, but you have to be under general anesthesia, if that's the case that you have to be under general anesthesia, so you are now in a makom sakana. And if you're in sakana, you have to bench gomel. And not only that, but you're taking the risk, because taking out a kidney poses the risk of infection, poses the risk of dying from an infection. You're taking a chance. Are you allowed to do it? So Rav Moshe answers the question that because, today it's pretty well accepted that it's not as risky as the life you're saving. This man is a vadai going to die, and you may live through it, and you're willing to take that risk. You're not chayiv to take it. You're not required to, but you can. Rav Moshe Paskins, you can. So they asked Rav Moshe, what about these two? How could they do it? It was a vadai that they were going to die. It wasn't a maybe. They were vadai going to die. So how could they take that risk? So Moshe answered Parsha, because these two were saving all of that town, of all of Klal Yisrael. When it's saving the rabbim, then you're allowed to put yourself in such a risk. Are you chayiv to? No, you're not. But that's why they were saved. Now, one of the people who were listening to our Shiur, one of the Chashuva members, told us, Esther Hamalka did that when it came to Purim. She put her life in danger by going to the king before he extended his want. She didn't know if he would. If he wouldn't extend it, she would die. Nevertheless, she went and did it because she was going to be saving the whole Klal Yisrael. And so she's allowed to take that risk. And here, Yaakov is sending Binyamin down because it was not as great a risk. It wasn't a guarantee. It was a maybe. And Binyamin and Yaakov were willing to do it in order to bring Shimon back and save parts of Klal Yisrael. So therefore, it is acceptable. I'd like to just end off the Shiur by telling everybody, there's a famous discussion in the Sefer Tamei and Hagim about a very strange thing. The Tamei and Hagim asks, why is it that on Hanukkah, when we spin the dreidel, we spin it from the top, while on Purim, when we spin the grager, we spin it from the bottom? It seems like such a innocuous little question. And how could you even come up with a svara that has to do with the Yom Tov itself? Fascinating, said Tommy and Robin. You see, when you take a look at Al Anisim of Hanukkah, it says, Ravta es rivam, danta es dinam, no kamta es nikmasam. You fought their battles, you judged their judgments, you took their revenge. Because they, the Jews, at that time, unfortunately, many of them were assimilationists. There was a hardcore group of wonderful B'nai Torah, the Chashmonaim and his children, but they were the few, not the many. And nevertheless, Hashem took their revenge. He judged their judgments. He fought their battles. While on Purim, Esther said, Lech kinosas kol hayudim, go gather all the Jews, Hashem Shushan v'tzu olai, fast with me, val tochlu, val tishtu, shloshes yom and laila v'yom, damaniv aros hayotzim kain, u'v'chein lo alamelech. She said, everybody should fast, everyone should do tshuva, and if everyone fasts and everyone does tshuva, then I'll be able to go to the king, and I will be successful, because everyone fasted and everyone prayed. Says the Tamim and Hagam. What do we see? If you take a look at the bracha that we say after the Megillah, we say, Harav es uveinu, v'adon es dineinu, v'anokem es nikmaseinu. Again, in Chanukah, Ravta es vivav. Purim, Harav es uveinu. Danta es dinam on Chanukah, right? But on Purim, we say, v'adon es dineinu. And on Chanukah, we say, Nakamta es nikmasam, you took their revenge. And on Purim, we say, Anokem es nikmaseinu, our revenge. So in other words, on Hanukkah, it was all Hashem's doing because we were undeserving, while on Purim, we were deserving because we fasted and prayed. So on Hanukkah, the help came from the top. And so we spin the dreidel from the top. While on Purim, the help came from within ourselves because we fasted, we spin the grager from the bottom. It's based on the Al Anisim and on the bracha after the Megillah, which is so fascinating. Even small little observances, when it comes to the Jewish people, everything is so deeply rooted in our faith and our tradition, in the brilliance of the understanding of the nature of the Jewish people. And even the eating of latkes on Hanukkah, which is made from oil because of the miracle that took place at that time. And there are many of the Gedolim who said, don't make fun of these seemingly small little observances because they're rooted in deep-seated ideas for the benefit of Klal Yisrael. So I have this opportunity. I want to wish everyone a wonderful, good Shabbos. This Shabbos, you have the privilege of taking out 3 Sifrei Torah. 3. One for the Parsha, one for Rosh Chodesh, and one for Chanukah. And of course, we'll be saying Hallel, Musaf to Rosh Chodesh. What a wonderful opportunity. What a wonderful Yom Tov. I wish everyone a wonderful Shabbos, Shabbat Shalom, Boro, Chodesh Tov, and Lichtikin Chanukah, like they say, a light-filled Chanukah. And Yetz Hashem, we will get back next week on Thursday night and once again discuss the Parsha. Have a good Shabbos, everybody.